Welcome to the CLESTalk, Law for Sustainable Cities, a monthly podcast that focuses on all things cities, law, and environmental sustainability. In this podcast, we venture into different urban and environmental legal themes, feature special guests, and also host our own CLES researchers. For those who may not know, CLES is a research chair under the National Research Foundation's Research Chair Initiative and operates under the Faculty of Law at the Northwest University, South Africa. My name is Henrika Saunders. I am an LLM student at CLES and your host for this session. Today we have Professor Anél du Plessis with us in the CLES studio. Professor du Plessis is based at the Northwest University and is the CLES Chair Holder, and our theme for today is Law and Policy Research as a change agent for environmentally sustainable cities on the African continent. Thank you for joining us in the studio today, Professor. We're so excited to have you as our first guest.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself as a researcher, a female academic, and your professional career over the past 17 years?
Wow, 17 years sounds so long, but I can tell you it went by incredibly fast. In the 10 years between 1998 and 2008, I completed the degrees BA Law, LLB, LLM, and LLD. And my first exposure to a foreign country and city was actually in 2002, when I completed the final semester of my LLB at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. When I returned to South Africa, I applied for a master's degree in international trade law, and thereafter I started part-time with my doctoral study. And at the same time as I started the doctoral degree, I did internships at SASOL, the Center for Environmental Management at the Northwest University, and at the South African Human Rights Commission. And to be honest, these really were invaluable experiences and helped to shape the direction my academic career would later take. I was appointed as a lecturer in 2005 and became a full professor at the start of 2012. I've lectured during this time many different modules, undergrad and postgrad, but my interest remained stuck all of the time on public law subjects and research methodology. I'm grateful also to have been exposed to these fields at tertiary institutions abroad, in the United States, Australia and Germany, where I got funding to spend some extended periods. My doctorate was on the role of local government in South Africa in the fulfillment of the constitutional environmental right, and this really has been the starting point of what would later become a research career in the field of law and in urban sustainability. I became the incumbent of the NRF-funded South African Research Chair in Cities, Law and Environmental Sustainability that you so eloquently introduced earlier. This happened in 2019 and has definitely been a career highlight for me.
That's quite astonishing, Professor. Your research experience and accomplishments are something I know others aspire to. Looking back at the start of your academic research career, what has triggered your interest in the field of urban sustainability, considering that you studied law?
It has been a mix of personal background and professional exposure. My father used to be a local government official. I grew up in the Vaal Triangle here in South Africa in a house of local government speak, also in relation to industrial pollution caused by heavy industries in the vicinity of where we lived. But the real trigger was a project on greener governance in municipalities that I was involved in by Professor Johan Nel at the Center for Environmental Management in 2004, where I had to do a case study write-up of 17 medium-sized municipalities in Southern Africa. And this really opened my eyes to the field of local government and environmental sustainability.
Yes, Professor, that was quite a journey that you've had. What would you say does the law have to do with environmental sustainability and sustainable cities and towns, not only globally, but especially in Africa and in South Africa?
The law is one change agent. For me, it creates boundaries for human conduct and it steers decision-making. So the law sets principles for governance, but it also provides for measures to protect present spaces, present environments for us living in the now, but also for future generations. The law in and by itself has limited force, though. I think we should agree that its strength lies in being implementable, being implemented and enforced, and mostly being respected by the very people and the institutions that it aims to serve.
And so, where does law and policy research fit in? Why is the research in this field important, and does it have any impact?
Well, I hope that it has impact. For me, research in general is about making meaning of things and phenomena and help solving problems. Law and policy research in the field of urban sustainability focuses on the boundaries as well as the opportunities created by a regulatory system that controls and that enables. But basically, law and policy research questions not only what is and what ought to be or what could be, but it also provides for rules and for an investigation of the rules, the rights, the principles, the values and regulatory systems that we need for decision-making, planning and the regulation of the conduct by those in power.
As you mentioned, you're the incumbent of the NRF CLES Chair in Cities, Law and Environmental Sustainability. Which contributions do you see this research institution make in the field?
Perhaps I can first of all mention that there is really only a handful of funded research chairs in South Africa working in the area of law. So it's a great privilege for the Northwest University Faculty of Law to be hosting one of these. And I do see our contribution to be made at two levels. The first is capacitating and equipping a new cohort, a new generation really, of postgraduate and postdoctoral researchers to become critical thinkers in academia, on the bench, perhaps even in the non-governmental sector, as far as the law and operations around local government for a more environmentally sustainable work and living environment are concerned. This means that we can make a contribution in expanding as a group of researchers this field of knowledge and research. And then secondly, we are contributing, again I hope, in tangible ways to the co-creation of knowledge and new information around the intersection of environmental, local government, urban and sustainability law and urban development as such. As a team, our list of publications at CLES is fast growing. I'm very proud of that. We have authored a number of technical reports the past couple of years, and several students already completed the first postgrad degree, the master's degree, that is, under the auspices of the chair, and several of these are now pursuing that second postgrad degree at doctoral level.
It's quite exciting. You mentioned that you're determined to enable students to take the research agenda on cities, law and environmental sustainability further. How do you do this?
Well, I hope that somehow I'm leading by example, but more deliberately, we are creating many opportunities for research skills development, create some international exposure, and we help students to get published and cited. I work very closely with each and every one of the student researchers in the chair, and we also have a very strong peer support system. I think capacity development at this level is a mix of talent, dedication, and a willingness to learn on the one hand, and opportunities and patience with the development process on the other.
Professor, what are some of the single biggest legal questions that remain to be asked in this field of study? If you should name three, what would they be?
There are plenty. I think that three of the questions that are most pressing from where I stand is firstly, how should law and legal research adapt to a changing world, a changing environment and constantly changing geopolitics? The law is a way of being quite fixed and fixated on certainty, but the Anthropocene and the times that we live in certainly requires of us to carefully rethink the function of the law. Secondly, I think we should ask, what are the key elements for urban inclusivity, safety, sustainability and resilience in an African context? In other words, the context where we operate, and that is at the interface of informality, serious levels of persisting urban poverty and unprecedented urbanization. And then lastly, we need to ask how the law can help better facilitate health in cities and in the supporting rural hinterlands, especially in a country like ours, South Africa, where energy, food and water security is as pressing in cities as it is in much smaller towns and other rural areas. But in addition to these questions, some of the issues that I think we should critically look at in the research still to be done include safe mobility, urban mobility, issues of public health risk management, inclusivity in our cities in relation to issues of gender, age, but also persisting race-related distinctions, then informality, part and parcel of urban governance in an African context, and then also the smart transitions needed in terms of water and energy governance in our cities and towns, and then more climate savvy planning and housing if we would like to achieve slightly more resilient communities across the country.
Bearing these questions in mind, do you think that there is merit in turning our backs completely on developments and research from the global north, especially as far as it concerns a local action towards climate mitigation and adaptation?
I've been quite vocal, I should say, since I'm all for context-relevant research and for representative messages on the role of cities in urban sustainability at a global scale. However, it would be naive to turn our backs on the lessons, experiments, and the learning points from abroad, both from countries of the global north and the global south. Every city, every country, every region is a laboratory of its own, and I think there is definitely merit in us as researchers asking what we can learn that's relevant and suitable for the South African or the African situation. But the opposite is definitely also true. I think there is plenty that other countries could also learn from the South African law and policy framework, our resilience as a people, and about how we go around persisting problems such as water scarcity.
Thank you, Professor. I do think that was quite an elegant answer to the question. Moving towards the end of our discussion, tell us a bit of some of the ongoing projects and institutional partners that CLES collaborates with.
Well, CLES is really lucky to be able to cooperate with great South African and foreign partners. We have established memorandums of agreement with United Nations Habitat, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, the South African Cities Network, and the South African Local Government Association. But we also collaborate with other universities in the country. I don't really want to single out, but I can perhaps mention the Chair in Waste and Society at UWC and Wits Law School. And we are also now wrapping up a research project that was funded by the Alexander von Humboldt Stiftung. And I do not want to divulge too much at this point, but we are spreading our research wings a little bit to also look more into urban development and local climate change governance from a legal perspective in other African countries. So all I can say at this point, we have an exciting 3 years ahead.
These collaborations do sound quite exciting, and I'm excited to see where this project will go in the future. If you could leave the audience with one lesson you have learned or one insight about sound law and policy research in the field of cities, law, and environmental sustainability, what would it be?
The most important thing is that I think one should be cautious of assumptions. As researchers, we should always be aware of the fact that more law is not going to improve this world. Law is one change agent in a sea of others, which is also why I'm all for applied and multidisciplinary research.
Thank you very much, Professor du Plessis, for joining us today and for the enlightening discussion. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have as well.
Thank you very much, Enrique.
To our audience, remember to like, follow, share, and subscribe, and also to interact with us and our guests on social media. You can continue the conversation with us and our guests on Twitter at CLES or on Facebook at CLES, as well as on LinkedIn at CLES. Thank you for listening to CLESTalk, Law for Sustainable Cities, and look out for our next podcast in later this month.